Welcome to the Automate and Grow podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the Automate and Grow podcast. And I'm here today with Kent from OrderMyGear. And Kent, I'm probably going to pronounce your last name wrong, so I'm going to allow you to introduce your own last name. It's McKeaigg, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, McKeaigg.
Mm-hmm. And Kent, OrderMyGear is a really interesting platform company in the e-commerce space around apparel with teams. And I appreciate that you joined us first of all. So thank you for joining this episode, which is episode 20, by the way, of the Automate and Grow podcast. Thanks
for having me.
So we talked a little bit before we started recording, and I'm always interested to understand from an entrepreneurial point of view, like what made you start this company? I know it was back around 2008 you started rolling, and maybe you can kind of tell us like what was your journey to start OrderMyGear, and then we can talk a little bit from there about what it is.
Yeah, so I was working for a web company here in Dallas, more on the account management sales side, and was learning a ton, working with engineers. And my dad had sold sporting goods to teams in Northwest Oklahoma, and did that for 36 years, and had built a good network of high school coaches. And told my dad, hey, we need to, I'm learning all this stuff. We need to figure out something to do when you retire so we can make some money on the side. And so that's kind of where it started. And then we tried a few different things. And then one day he came back. He had sold $13,000 to a baseball team, and it was a group order, but all the kids had to pay individually. So the school bought the uniforms, but the kids and the parents had to buy the hoodie and the practice gear and batting glove and all that kind of stuff. And so he came back with a stack of order forms that was 4 inches thick with checks and cash stapled, credit card numbers written across the top, and was going to tally it all up. And, it's like, there's got to be a better way. And so, we built a platform that allowed him to create a custom store and display, kind of promote, manage those products, then collect the order data and collect the payment data. And so the challenge early on was that every team order was unique. From some were doing fundraising, some were doing different products, name on back, number on the sleeve.
Right.
So it was a little bit more of a custom sort of e-commerce approach, and everything was timed, right? So the baseball team that he worked with, they had to order as a group at a specific time so that all the stuff got there, before the season started. And so that's kind of where we started. We tried to work with the company that he sold for about a year, or about 6 to 8 months in 2008. And it was a bunch of old, they were using a DOS-based accounting system at the time, 3-color PO pad. And so they didn't have a clue really what was going on. They also didn't realize the market that what parents and kids would spend if they had the option. That was right about at the time school budgets were going down in 2008. And so people in that business thought, oh man, school budgets are going down, my business is going to suffer. But in reality, once they gave the opportunity to parents to actually spend money, their business went, it actually grew because parents were willing to spend more than schools were spending. And so we got connected to a buying group, which was a collection of companies towards the end of 2008. And they were trying to figure out some of the things that we had already figured out, and finally had a core group of 10 to 15 local distributors across the country that were out, had sales reps out calling on teams. And so, back then we didn't really think we were on to anything big. I thought, man, if I could get this side project kind of, rolling, maybe I could make 50 or 60 grand a year.
So this was a side hustle originally. It was like,
I was still working full time. And so once that group came on, we had about 15 customers, and I felt like it made sense, to take the jump. And so I hung on, was fortunate enough to have a few more paychecks at the beginning of 2009, and then went full time April 1st of 2009. So, and really the first couple of years, like I said, we thought it was, if I could just get, these plates spinning, thought it could be a job, something that I had some cash flow with.
Sure.
Over the next couple of years, we hunkered down just with that group. So we grew from 15 to about 50 customers within that group, and each customer, their business was doubling, each year.
Wow.
And over those, first few years, we kind of realized, wait, this process is broken on the brand side, the manufacturers. So Under Armour, Adidas, CCM, since you're a hockey guy, Bauer. But then it's also broken on the organization side. So, you've got your, school district, inside of school, you've got athletics, the athletic director, then you've got, non-athletic groups, band, student council. So it's just a lot of, sort of different layers on the decision makers there. And then you also have this kind of the hockey stuff you were talking about. You have this travel, elite, industry that's exploded over the last 10 years.
In a lot of sports, right? Like in basketball, my daughter's a softball player at college. And it's crazy, the travel ball industry is insane. It is an industry in the end, right?
Yeah, and a lot of those, now she's probably got recruited more from her travel, what she was doing on the travel side versus the high school.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now, which is even more fragmented, right? Because you have volunteer coaches. It's
it's the Wild West in certain sports.
It certainly is. So
that's another episode.
So that's where, that's where, kind of the next stage of our business as we grow with the national leagues and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's kind of how we started, and sort of about 2012 realized, okay, we're, what we thought was kind of this, small little niche business. We realized there's 50 million kids playing 2 sports a kid. And, then there's corporate apparel, there's intramurals, there's, adult leagues, there's just all sorts of groups that want apparel and equipment. So we did an accelerator program at the end of 13, and raised about $500,000 at the beginning of 14.
Great.
And then, been growing, kind of tripping over ourselves ever since.
Well, that's some of the joys of growth, right? You try to figure things out as you go. But I think it's a really exciting story because you hit on a couple of things, and we talked about this before. Like, from a personal point of view, I've been involved in hockey for a long time as, both a coach, but also as a director of coaching. And I see firsthand the challenges that an organization has when they start getting into the equipment business, if so to speak, right? Where it's like, we need to get apparel to everybody day to day, but it's not modern the way we're doing it, right? It's what's interesting, I think, what you're doing is, so what you're describing is that let's say let's call it a minor hockey association, for example. I might have like 15 teams. You provide me the tools to set up my own store and for individual families to go on and make purchases according to my guidelines.
Correct. Yeah. So we would work with the distributor or the brand and or both, that are selling you and fulfilling, those products and that equipment. So the idea is that, if you have 15 teams, let's say 15 kids a team, those, those 15 coaches might be going 15 different directions.
Not the way we let it, but
yeah, that's good. But in a lot of leagues, that's what's happening, right? The coaches are kind of on their own.
It's the Wild West. Right? Like softball would be a good example of that a lot of times. It depends on the organization, but.
Yeah, so then kids are also going to Amazon. They're going to Dick's Sporting Goods. They're going a million different directions also to get stuff. Right. So the idea would be, how can we put it in one store, and hopefully streamline the process for the kid and parent, and then also generate hopefully some revenue, sponsorship dollars for the league, so that now you're getting actually credit for the equipment and the apparel. That's going through. So either your purchasing power hopefully gets bumped up.
Right.
Obviously, we're taking away the risk of coaches collecting money. My 6.5-year-old son played t-ball. We went to 5 different places to get, the things that we needed, which is obviously miserable for the parent, especially for a 6-year-old t-ball team. But, hopefully the experience is better on the parent side. The coach now doesn't have to mess with it. You guys as a league are not taking an inventory position. You're ordering the things that kids have already paid for. And hopefully, regardless of whether it's a national league that's got, millions of kids, or whether it's a local league that, is more of a rec league, hopefully, when you order that way, you can provide a broader product option. So, you can throw things in there that if, 10 people buy, you can still order it. Something you wouldn't buy, hoping 10 people buy, but you can increase that product selection, which obviously meets the needs of kids and parents.
Right.
And you can get down to really branding at the team level. So oftentimes parents or even siblings would love to buy a polo that they would wear to the golf course or wear to work that says their team on it, but they often don't have that option.
Right.
And if they do have an option, you bought maybe a crappy polo because it was cheap and you hope parents would buy. Now you give the parent a little more specific of an option. And because everyone's paying up front, you're fulfilling that order once you're collecting orders. Now you've got a little bit more streamlined experience, as long as it's done at the right time. Anytime you're doing, there's kind of five interesting things, I think, that 5 things that make our business sort of complicated and interesting. You've got a group order, which in and of itself is not that complicated. It's paid individually. Again, those together aren't that complicated. But now you have the stuff in the store is actually decorated to the group, and oftentimes the individual. So that starts to get a little hairy. And the fourth thing is really a big kicker, and that is the group is small, right? So we're not dealing with the University of Texas where they can take an inventory position and that they have such a big market, they'll sell it. That fourth thing really becomes what's complicated about the team sporting goods space. And then the fifth thing is that generally that sub-community or that team is passionate about the tribe that they belong to. So when you're talking about an elite softball team or a travel team or whatever, odds are you spent a lot of money just traveling to the games your daughter was playing in.
God, yeah,
and,
for sure.
And you would have worn apparel,
yep.
Or you did wear apparel that had their team on it because you and your daughter want to say we're part of this tribe. This is who we are. This is kind of who we run with.
So when I start working with OrderMyGear as an association, are you giving the association supplier options and then actual gear options where they're selecting it for the organization, and then of course they put their licensed brand on it? Is that correct? And
yeah.
So you're going through all the design part with the association, but then you're enabling the presentation of that through an e-commerce storefront rather than here's a piece of paper and check it off and trying to corral cats, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've started the core of our business and the growth of our business was servicing the distributor. So in that scenario, there was somebody that, could sell Bauer, could sell CCM. They came to you and said, hey, let me sell you uniforms for your league. That was the entry point, for our software. What's happened is as we've worked closer with brands and with those distributors, we're now sitting at the table with the league, or the league is coming to us. And so us working directly with leagues is kind of a new part of our business. And so depending on where the league is coming in and who they're working with from a distributor standpoint or a brand standpoint, we don't sell the goods, right? So we don't have an account with CCM. We're not trying to get you to buy from us. We're trying to set you up with the option that fits your needs.
So
maybe that's
a two-sided
price driven or correct. So if you don't have a distributor, we'll find you one.
Beautiful.
And if you do, then we can work with that distributor and streamline the process, hopefully increase their sales as we do it, because now we're trying to get eyeballs doing, going to that store, adding equipment, adding things that your kids and parents are going to Dick's Sporting Goods or Amazon, to buy.
So it's not just limited to apparel, it sounds like it could be helmets, it could be in the case of sticks or bats. Or, okay.
Yep.
And then so you're essentially as I said, creating a two-sided marketplace, which is a big trend, but you're doing it around e-commerce, which is really interesting. This is a space that Amazon's kind of gobbled up, but you have a very specific niche that sounds like you understand and have done a lot of work to, monetize. But to that end, I'm curious what your model is. Like, are you selling a platform to the distributor? Are you acting as an intermediary for payment? Like, what's the model of OrderMyGear?
Yeah, so the model's evolving, but initially our value prop was to the distributor. So
Okay.
my dad called on Ponca City High School baseball. My dad didn't want to collect order forms, so he used our platform as he sold to Ponca City High School baseball. He said, "Do you want to do an online store? Here are the products." He would come to us or go to the software, build the store, and now he could streamline that. Now what that's turned into is we're essentially we provide a lot of data and analytics to brands. So now the brands use us to market to people like my dad, to package product and get my dad hopefully to sell their brand versus a different brand. And then now schools, leagues, facilities, they're using our platform to control the process as well. And so if you look at we always kind of want to say we want to be the auto trader of team sports.
Okay.
So auto trader, you've got, the Chevy is selling their Tahoe. The local Chevy dealership is selling a used Tahoe. And then you've got a consumer that's buying a car. And that car purchasing experience is totally different than it was 15 years ago. Because now if I'm buying a Tahoe in Dallas that's got less than 30,000 miles, that's newer than 2012, I can go find the exact the cars that fit my specifications. So that's the direction we're headed.
Okay.
But at this point, we sort of have this value prop at the distribution level, the value prop at the brand level, and then a value prop, hopefully, that we're building at the league school level.
Interesting. And so if I shift gears a little bit, you've had phenomenal growth. You've hit on something that's obviously an important gap in the market. So you've identified it from personal pain. When you started building, because I think you mentioned you're not really the technical founder, you're
Correct.
more of a business founder, right? What was your experience like, and how many times have you rebuilt, and what was your experience like for the first time in developing technology from the ground up? But I'm thinking too, even just the time that you started, which was like 2008 till now, technology's changed very much. So I'm just kind of curious what your experience has been like that.
Man, if I had all the money I spent on code that never saw the light of day, I'd be living somewhere different. But what was interesting is even in 2008, we built. We rebuilt once we got connected to that buying group. We essentially rebuilt what we had built the first 8 months, and so the model was a little bit different with what they wanted and what we were originally thinking, and so. We had a captive audience that was sort of committed to at least giving us a shot. And so we went back to the drawing boards and sort of we didn't get down into the guts, but we sort of, rewrote kind of how we were doing it. Yep. That lasted about 5 months.
Oh, wow. Oh my God. Okay.
We realized about 4 or 5 months later, okay, everything, we got to start over. And so we started over, launched that second version from the ground up, probably summer of 2009. And that we were able to ride that for a year or two. And there were components of it that while we did that, we rewrote. So essentially, probably a year or two later, almost everything was different, but we rewrote it, component by component. And then, man, over the last 4 years, it's been constantly all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Were you prepared for that as like a non-technical founder? Was that kind of a surprise to you, or?
Yeah, I think there's the way that I've tried to look at it is everything we missed. Well, there are things that evolved. So, if the platform in 2008 got us to the platform that we rebuilt in 2009, that just evolved. There's a lot of things we missed where we built and it never saw the light of day. And so I kind of look at everything that either evolved or that we missed and said, it was an investment. Hopefully the lessons we learned we could apply to the next thing we built, and we were that much closer. But I think I learned pretty early on, we did have a group of customers paying.
Right. I was
And
going to
so,
say it was at least somewhat funded, right? So,
yeah,
yeah.
so everything, the analogy we would use back then was, on a college building, they build the sidewalks first and then they build the buildings. And 6 months later, they see where grass is dead and they should have built sidewalks because
Right.
that's where kids are walking. And so our approach early on was, hey, let's build the buildings and just see where people are walking and see what's being used and what people like and then adapt. And so I think we learned early on, because we had customers that were paying us, the pain of spending time and money and then redoing it was less, because we felt like every time we did that, we were getting that much closer to, the platform that we were, shooting to build.
I think that's one of the things that maybe it's easy to underestimate, which is you think you're going to build a set product, it's a factory, and you're done. And I guess what I've observed is that, and even from personal, like I've built over 100 SaaS and app platforms for other people. And a lot of times those projects run out of, runway, because people think, well, I'm done, right? And it's almost like you have to buy into this concept of, no, now you need feedback on the product. And then you've got to be prepared to figure out how to keep investing and evolving it. Because the moment you don't, number one, you lose the customer probably. And number two, your product innovation will be elapsed by someone else, which is probably the same thing in the end, right? Somebody else will grab your customers.
Yeah. And we always felt like, even though we were in this old school antiquated industry, we always felt like we were that, cool coffee shop in a small town, just hoping Starbucks didn't open up across the street, So we knew that early on. I don't think we knew early on we spent most of our money on product and didn't take a whole lot of, especially the first 5-6 years. Well, really ever. I've never taken a bunch of, just tried to be a lifestyle company where I'm taking the money at the end of the year and, putting it in my pocket. We always were trying to invest in the product, probably less strategically and intentional than we realized. But looking back, that's one thing was glad I did, is that we were always trying to figure out what was the next thing we needed to build, what was the next thing that we needed to, invest in or try. And that sort of reaps some benefits down the road with, our customer base, like you said, but then also other revenue opportunities.
That makes sense. So now it's like not technology for the technology's sake, it's technology to drive actual revenue.
Yeah. And, we're a service company. And, if we can make our customers, whether it's a coach, whether it's a sales rep, or whether it's the, regional guy for Adidas, if we can make them more efficient at what they do, make what they're doing easier, then at the end of the day, they'll do what they do very well, and they'll use us to provide value in the way that we do.
1 sec.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
I don't know what is with this cough. I keep having to edit some chunk of my last 3 episodes out. Sorry.
No.
So, from a business point of view, then you'd mentioned that you were part of an accelerator, and were you actively then at some point going out and looking for capital, or was it more business advice? Like what motivated you, and how did you come across the accelerator? I assume that's in Dallas.
Yeah. We were profitable, so we didn't really need, I think they wrote us a $30,000 check. We felt like that our business had grown. And even though we were a technology company, we were still a small business. And, because it had grown, we felt like our day-to-day was taking up us solving what we thought was a much bigger problem.
I see what you're saying.
And so we felt like, from a, Dallas startup community to, investors, we felt like it would benefit us to, get some help, learn a little bit. And we also thought it would help us get some talent down the road.
Which is really tough, if you don't, when you're small, like you run into those areas where it's like, it'd be nice to have someone that.
Yeah, yeah, and especially in Dallas because we're not known, as a startup, at least not nearly like Austin, New York, San Francisco, Portland, those kind of places.
So I'm curious, and then I think you mentioned, this is always close to my heart, but it sounds like you've been using Salesforce as part of your backend for the last, I guess, year and a half, and I'm curious, like what requirement drove that, and how your experience has been integrating to that.
Yeah, so we used Zoho for a while, and we really didn't know what we were doing. We just knew we needed some CRM, and we were pretty cheap. I think the more that our sales process and team grew, the more we knew that we needed to make that jump. And I was pretty hesitant just because, just the implementation is so expensive and it's just expensive, especially with our business model. It's hard to resonate because we get paid based on the volume that goes through our system. So if we don't produce results, we don't get paid. But we just knew we needed to do it. And so we took that plunge probably about this time last year. It took a little bit of a runway for us to get everything set up, and then I'd say we sort of tripped around the first 3 to 6 months, and where we are now, we've got both on the technical side, but more specifically on the sales side, we've our leaders have just jumped in and are running all sorts of reports, and now they've really embraced the reporting aspects of it. And so from onboarding to sales development, sales, onboarding, dealer success, we've integrated obviously with our application. We've also integrated with Looker, which is an analytics platform. And so now, I feel like we're humming and kind of, taking that next level sort of look to where we're really uncovering some insights and, that type of stuff. But it's Salesforce is kind of like, the topic of investing in product. It's like, it's only as useful as how much you spend getting things set up, and it's a constantly moving target. But the nice thing is we've got people that are on the account management and sales side that are really digging in and know how to use it.
Oh, that's positive. And for all of this, including like, do you have a CTO in your corporation, or how do you guys like make strategy decisions? I'm kind of curious because obviously, you're in a very non-technical business typically, so I'm curious how you arrived at that, or if you just and are you doing development in house? I'm curious about that too.
Yes, we have about 20 engineers in house, and my original co-founder, he wrote sort of the first version and a half. We were able to, we found a freelance guy that's now been with us over 7 years, that kind of helped us deploy that sort of third version in middle of 2009. And then, so the guy that helped me start, I bought him out. He was actually a high school whiz kid. I bought him out his sophomore year in college, and then we did the series round in 2014. I brought him back as COO. So he's got a technical background, and then from a strategy perspective, he plays a role. Our head of engineering plays a role, and then we have a VP of sales who oversees kind of most of our revenue generating functions. He was actually an old customer. And so he was kind of one of our first customers in 2008. And he started with us. So he knows the industry, the product side of it, those type of things. So, that's where a lot of the strategies decided. But, we're pretty flat organization. So we have 2 people that do product. So they're working with the different teams. Our team leads, obviously they're playing a role in the different strategy, not just by function, but overall. So, that's kind of where, we've kind of gone through the last 6 months, kind of a stage where we added functions. Before that we were we were adding people to the functions we currently had.
Fires.
Then as we, yeah, then as we, as we looked at those functions, we thought, okay, we need to separate out sales and sales development. We need to separate out onboarding, key accounts, and customer success. And so we've kind of over the last 6 months went from 4 or 5 functions to 11 or 12, and so each of those team leads over those functions, which are anywhere from 4 to 5, they're helping us form that strategy. And we've done the same thing on the engineering side. So it was kind of 10, 12 sort of
that's great.
Jack of all trades.
You've got legitimate resources that you can draw on, and I think that's one of the biggest things when we talk to people on the podcast is it's interesting to understand the different approaches to it. And I think the biggest challenge is there's so much stuff. How do you understand the platforms, the technology choices, and then, well, am I changing the business to meet the technology, or how do I understand the tool enough to map it to what the business needs? And so it sounds like you've got a great group there that can kind of start leading some of that. Although I'm sure there's learning along the way.
Oh yeah, we've been fortunate on the technical side to have, when we did the seed round, really we had one full-time developer, brought in 2 sort of senior level developers, and they've really shaped the vision and the strategy on the technical side, which has been great. That A, they were competent, and B, they've made good decisions. And yes, there's been a ton of learning, but I haven't had to see as much of that pain as they have.
Well, so I want to be conscious of your time. What we'll do is I'm going to ask you, first of all, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think we should, and how do people get in touch with you?
The only thing that, every startup's different. And so, I don't want to assume that our journey is, something that is the exact journey that other startups should take. But one thing that was, looking back, I didn't strategically try to do this, but looking back, one thing that really helped us get off the ground is we were able to find customers, a small group, but customers that paid us. And we provided enough value. And at that time, nothing was scalable. Like, if you'd have told me back then we would have 20 employees, I would have said there's no way.
Wow. Yeah.
But, we did have customers that paid us, and those first 3 or 4 years of the company, we were able to really learn what they needed and meet their needs. And I always encourage startups, if you can get somebody paying you as quick as possible, it's amazing. It's amazing what you'll learn and how fast you'll actually get things done when you've got these people that have expectations.
I think that's really good feedback, because I think a lot of, especially maybe younger tech founders, see the sizzle, which is, hey, there's a product and there's people using it. And I say a product, a digital product, right? Which is, you have a platform. But what you're describing is when we start digging down with other entrepreneurs such as yourself, the reality comes out that sometimes there's like the Wizard of Oz analogy where there's don't look at the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
but to your point, if the most important thing is to help the customer, right? So it's and sometimes it sounds like what you're describing is curate that customer journey, even though the technology may not be there yet until it is, because eventually you'll get leverage out of that. But in the meantime, you still do business, right?
Well, and we tried to help them enough that they saw fit to pay us, which So I think we didn't spend a lot of time, working out a 3-year plan, or thinking through how to be $1 billion company. We sort of started out with, hey, we got these, 15 customers that each have 5 to 20 sales reps. How do we, if we can make their lives better, then eventually we'll be able to scale. And so I think that, that was just looking back, that was something I'm glad we had. And I think it was a big part of our initial growth. But as far as getting a hold of me, just Kent, Kent at OrderMyGear.com, is probably the best way to get a hold of me, and be happy to chat or help if there's anything I can do to help.
That's amazing. Well, I will also include that in the show notes. I'm going to wrap up with 2 things that I usually wrap up on. The first one is, how are you, Kent, or OrderMyGear if you prefer, changing the world?
I think when you're a part of a sub-community, a baseball team, a swim team, student council, you're excited to be a part of that community, and people want apparel to say, this is the tribe I belong to. These are the people I run with. And if your kids are a part of a tribe, parents want apparel to say, this is who I run with. And so we think a lot of meaning happens in those sub communities on those teams, whether that's wearing something for the small company you work for or a race event. People find meaning in those events and in those sub communities, and we want to help them show that spirit and show that support. And so I think that's really important to us. On the flip side, our customers are in a complicated business. I saw my dad get up at 5, do paperwork, go sell, come home, do paperwork. And so, when you change somebody's world, I think that is a domino that helps you sort of change the world. And if we can help the people that use our system, again, whether it's a coach or a sales rep, if we can change their day, give them more time with their family, streamline their processes, then we look at that as a meaningful endeavor. And it's a painful industry, collecting group order forms and doing decorated apparel for small teams.
I know that pain. I can relate, and we will keep talking after this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you for that answer, because I would agree with you. I think those are all very impactful things, and to me that's very exciting, because I think I always kind of say to kids that I've coached, or older players that I've coached, it's like the lessons you'll learn here will be the ones you remember versus which math class you're going to remember. And nothing against math, because math is probably important, may not be taught right, but is important, right?
Yeah.
But I think this, we underestimate the value, and sometimes it's downplayed, of those tribes and the lessons that are learned through sports. So I think you're facilitating a lot of that. So I thank you for that. I think that's a big issue that I've observed firsthand. So I agree with you. I'll wrap up with one final thing, which is when we have interesting guests on our show, we like to be referred to other interesting guests. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to nominate someone to appear on an episode of Automate and Grow. And usually your first person that pops in your head is the best one. So we usually talk to either entrepreneurs or experts, entrepreneurs about their journey like we have, or experts in automating marketing, sales, support, or product innovation.
Yeah. So I think I'd probably nominate Brian DeLuca. He started Foot Cardigan. It's a sock subscription company here in Dallas. They were on Shark Tank. They didn't end up doing a deal there, but he's super creative guy. Tons of personality, and his personality comes out in how they market their product. They've gone through ups and downs, and he's just been a scrappy entrepreneur that is doing really well today. And so he's a really fun guy, really funny as well. But anyway, he's got a good story, and it's a really neat company here in Dallas.
That's great. Well, we will take that nomination. I'm excited to meet. So Brian DeLuca, you've been nominated to appear on an episode of Automate and Grow, and we'll follow up and get an introduction from Kent on that. And this has been episode 20. I think I need to do like a retrospective on knocking out 20 episodes in like 45 days.
Yeah.
Well, and I've been really blessed because I get to meet interesting people that have interesting stories. So I want to thank you for sharing episode 20 with me, and we'll see everybody on a future episode of Automate and Grow.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
This has been an episode of the Automate and Grow podcast. Check out other episodes for interesting topics on how to grow, innovate, and automate your business. Subscribe or like us on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, or on our website at www.automategrow.biz and get your copy of the book Automate and Grow at Amazon today.